Hey guys, it's Marty and welcome to owingsart.com. Today we're going to take a look at these Fibralo watercolor markers from the company Caran. Caran is a venerable Swiss company. They've been making related art supplies for just a little over 100 years. As a matter of fact, 2015 they celebrated their 100th anniversary. And I'm really excited basically for two reasons. One, there's very little coverage on these markers out there, very few like reviews, practical reviews about how these markers can be used and applied. I mean, there's some promotional videos by Caran and a few other short demonstrations, but not really an in-depth review. So that's exciting for me. I like to do a more in-depth review or look at these art supplies. And two, they're from one of my favorite companies in the world, Caran. And the reason they're one of my favorite companies in the world is because A, they're pretty transparent about their art supplies, B, they're super high quality, and C, they're really craftspeople. So these are people that take great pride in the products they produce. So inside, there's a pamphlet here that explains sort of some of the usages and a little bit of propaganda about the product, if you will. But here are some more detailed statistics you might be interested in. As I mentioned, they're made in Switzerland. They are watercolor markers. They come in a 10, 15, 24, and 30 marker set. You're all in if you buy the 30 marker set, which I did. That's 30 colors because there's 30 colors in the entire line. Now there are a few metallic markers available as well, but basically you get the 30, and here's a color list if you want to pause the video and look at all the colors, but otherwise we'll go through those here. One criticism I do have is the names aren't printed directly on the pen. You have to go to a color chart. So the Faber-Castell 9400 lead holder I'll use for a painting demonstration a little later on. I'll use that Staedtler ink pen, which is very, very nice, and this Pentel water brush. So here the Fibralos come in a very nice tin. This is a 100th anniversary. You can see there's a little circular label there. The 100th anniversary of Faber-Castell. And I'll use this Montville watercolor paper. This is 140-pound archival watercolor paper. They call it the Artist Series, made by Caran. That's a French company. This happens to be just a little sketchbook, but it is excellent, excellent paper, and I love Caran. I use a lot of their mixed media sketchbooks, which are both inexpensive and pretty good quality. So start out here by swatching out the colors as I always do, and since this is a combination sort of art supply, you could use it both dry and wet. I'll do a dry swatch and a wet swatch, and you can see for yourself, and I'll go a little bit more in depth about the color and things like that here in a second, but I just like to lay these down first and then add a little bit of water to them, and you can see that they pretty quickly turn into watercolors, which is pretty cool. Great application for sketching, sort of design work, anything like that you want to have sort of a softer watercolor look to, or just plain watercolors. Now, Caran typically places its art supplies into two categories. One is the artist category, and the other category is the hobbyist category. And these Fibralo markers fall into the hobbyist category. But I'll remark this about that even in the hobbyist category, when it comes to Caran, because their quality is so superior and so excellent, I find that many of the supplies that they label as hobbyist supplies are better than many companies' so-called artist grade supplies. And that's not just it's not a criticism of the other companies as much as it is a compliment to Caran and the craftsmanship and pride and stewardship they take in creating and manufacturing pretty great art supplies, if I'm being honest here. I mean, like I said, they're one of my favorite companies in the world just in general for the fact that they make good quality products. They're pretty transparent about the products they make, and when you compare them to other companies, they're really a leader in sustainability and recycling, sort of the things that we would care about in the environment. That's not to say they're perfect. One criticism I do have of Caran d'Ache is they rarely print the color names on their writing instruments, whether that's a pen or a pencil, and I wish they would, because I hate going to a color chart to look up their stuff. And these Prismalos, or the Fibralos, don't really have their own color chart. They share them with, I believe, the Prismalo. So I guess that's not a really big criticism of Caran d'Ache, but I'm sure they're not a perfect company, and they do things wrong sometimes. But I just like overall that, you know, they do just about everything I expect them to do as an art supply company, and they're kind of my go-to. They are costly, I will say that too. If you have any other criticism, or if I did, it would be that their art supplies cost a lot of money. But you know what the old saying is, quality is never cheap, and cheap is never quality. You sort of get what you pay for. And I've known a lot of people, a lot of artists have gone through many art supplies trying to find the right quality and consistency, only to have spent much more money on the lesser quality supplies than if they would have just bought the good stuff to begin with. So there's that. But I think that's just worth mentioning, that they are costly, amongst the most costly art supply companies, at least in terms of when you have to purchase them in the US. Now in mainland Europe that might be different. They might be a lot more affordable, or sort of comparable to Faber-Castell or other companies like that. But here in the good old USA, it costs just a little bit more money, but they're worth every single penny, in my opinion. So here I'm looking at just kind of running the water over a series of colors, and this is going to tell me a couple of things. Again, back to the dissolvability and just mixing some of the colors together. Now you can still see there's some remnants of the line work underneath, and I didn't really rub too hard, so if you do that, sometimes the paper will pill up. But here's a failed experiment. I thought, well, you know how you can take a colored pencil, dip a watercolor pencil, and you dip the tip into water, and it creates a really nice sort of a thick swath of color or whatever. Anyway, that does not work with markers, so don't try that. And I kind of learned that by the third time here, and so I just kind of danced around the edge, and it worked much better. I think if you soak the marker, for some reason it just doesn't travel well out of the end of the pen after that. So anyway, I figured that out quickly, but good lesson learned. So I didn't like the way the purple came out when I mixed the cobalt with the scarlet, so instead I'll try an ultramarine blue instead and see how that mixes there, because I think in order to really be sold on these markers, I want to know that you can sort of mix the color if you need to. So if I wanted to get a third color from two colors, I want to be able to do that, or any combination of colors for that matter. So I draw a little, use the ultramarine here, and then mix in a little bit of that red, and now I'm getting more of a purple. Now it's a little bit of a muted purple, but nonetheless that's good enough for me. The set actually comes with a couple of nice, I'd say purplish colors. So it comes with a violet and regular purple color and some others. You can go back to the color list if you're interested. But I think I mentioned the nice fact that it comes with several flesh tones, which is pretty cool. So I just added a little waterproof ink on the page, and then I'm just adding some color over it, just for fun. Kind of testing out the ink pen as well. These Stettlers say that they're fully waterproof, and so why not test them out? Now this wasn't quite dry when I added the watercolor to it, but that's fine. I got a little bit of ink run in there, but it was good to test that out anyway. So you could sort of see where the ink is running a little bit as I run that green over the top and then paint it. So not too bad. Yeah, you can see the colors look pretty nice here. So I think it's probably time we do a little comparison to some others. Now I don't have a ton of experience with watercolor markers per se. Really just use the Winsor & Newton watercolor markers, which you can see here. And I love those. I raved about the Winsor & Newton watercolor markers, and these are definitely on par with those. I'd say they're just, the Winsor & Newton are made in France. They're great watercolors, and I'd say they're just slightly better in terms of overall sort of satisfaction than these Caran d'Ache Fibralos. But again, you're comparing really a very inexpensive marker set to, and that's usually not the case with Caran d'Ache, but they're actually more inexpensive when you compare them to the watercolor markers made by Winsor & Newton. Now here's the Derwent Inktense, which is, again, really not fair, but I thought I'd compare them anyway, and just for vibrancy, again, these really stand out. These are the Winsor & Newton pigment markers, and I was not at all impressed with them, and they just didn't really, and they're pigment markers. They're not really the same as watercolor markers, again, so maybe the comparison isn't fair. Here's another look at the Winsor & Newton watercolor markers, which were, you know, like I said, those were excellent. So really that's a very short comparison to a few baselines I have, and now I think it's time for a little painting demo. So I already did the rough drawing here. There's some apple blossoms in a park not far from where I lived, and so I went down there to take a look at those and took a few pictures and sort of drew some quick sketches, and I'll try to paint those today. Now I'm not a floral painter. I don't do a lot of that work, or not a floral artist, but I'm really intrigued by the vibrancy of the colors, and it was springtime, and so the whole idea of being able to draw some really nice blossoms kind of hit me, and I just decided to take a quick shot at it. And so if you are a floral artist, please forgive me for my butchering of the craft here, but I want to try some out. So, and these these markers really paint well, if that's a way to put it. So you just need a little bit down, and they dissolve so nicely. You can and you can mix them. So on the flowers I've already done on the top, not the ones I'm working on the bottom, but I ended up adding some purple to that. Now there's a video at the end that shows the whole finished work, but I really liked adding additional color over color I'd already put down, and if it dried, was really easy to do that. And I just really love you can see the vibrancy, the way these colors pop on the page, and so super impressed. Now I went a little bit too neon green there, but on the leaf, but I was able to go back and tone that down a little bit, and then eventually added some background in and things like that. Now see, now there's just a touch of the violet, and just painting that right in was nice. So 30 of these in the set. I mean, I think there's some great colors here, a nice combination of warms and cools, and the greens are nice as well. And there's that gray in there, which I was a little less impressed with, but the fact that it comes with so many flesh tones really was impressive as well. Well, time for some final ratings on these. On a scale of 1 to 10, color was great, the vibrancy was simply outstanding, good pigment, great dissolvability, and overall quality is just really excellent, as you come to expect with Caran d'Ache, but I think they still deserve credit for that. Again, light fastness, I don't know yet. I'll put these to the test, but I mean, I would expect with Caran d'Ache quality that won't be a huge concern, but I'll check anyway. Overall, given what I know right now, I have to give these a nice high rating of 8 on a scale of 1 to 10. They're pretty outstanding. Well, here's the finished floral work. As I mentioned, I'm not a floral artist, so this was a pretty, just a sketch because I like apple blossoms. So, well, if you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and go ahead and leave me a comment. I love to hear from you guys, as you know, and try to respond as quickly as I can. And don't forget to share the video if you found it helpful. All right, well, this has been Marty for owingsart.com with a look at the Caran d'Ache Fibralo watercolor markers. Have a great day, everybody. So long for now. Bye-bye.